two women of notable attractiveness were observed dining on the restaurant's terrace. However, the male patrons of the establishment appeared to be otherwise engaged in conversation with one another, thus failing to acknowledge the women's presence. Melanie inquired of a tall, dark-haired woman, "How long has it been since we last met?" The first woman was of auburn hair. "It seems to me that I haven't seen her for quite some time." The second woman was blonde and approximately a year or two younger than her friend. "I know Gary and I feel somewhat remorseful about it, but between graduate school and family life, it was challenging to find time for anything else." "How are your studies at business school going?" "You must be close to completing your MBA." "Indeed, almost everything is ready. We have spring break next week, and then there are only a few weeks of classes remaining before I receive my diploma. I've already submitted my thesis, so I don't have to worry about that. Even better, it looks I will be exempt from all examinations, so everything should be straightforward." "This is wonderful, Melanie. I would like to extend my congratulations. Have you already secured employment?" "No, I have been extremely busy over the past 2 years, so I am planning to take a short break before returning to the workforce. I would like to relax and have some fun. I would like to take this opportunity to inquire about your well-being and to ascertain whether you have formed a romantic attachment. I am currently in a satisfactory situation, yet I am still searching for an appropriate partner." The blonde woman regarded her brunette friend with a discerning gaze, commenting on her appearance. "I would advise against hastily settling down. I suspect that you." She could, in theory, go out with different men every night if she so wished. Jerry gave her friend a sarcastic smile and said, "Believe me, Melanie, living alone these days isn't all it's cracked up to be. In order to find one decent man, you have to go through a dozen or so scoundrels. Frankly, it starts to get boring, to tell you the truth. I must admit that I am somewhat envious of you, Melanie, given that you are married to such a splendid individual as Adam. On the subject of Adam, I am curious as to the well-being of your husband. I trust that he is in good health. However, I have just heard a rather discouraging word. Is there something troubling you, Melanie?" "The issue is not that we have problems, it is simply that Adam is so occupied with his own affairs that we have limited time to spend together. Furthermore, even when we do have the opportunity to spend time together, we lack the financial resources to engage in leisure activities. Adam's primary focus seems to be on his professional endeavors with the aim of building a future for the two of us. I am aware that graduate school is not inexpensive. I am grateful for the opportunity to pursue my studies, but I occasionally find myself longing for the social experiences I enjoyed during my undergraduate years. Many of my classmates express a desire to attend social gatherings and meet new people, while I often find myself at home, watching television reruns." The woman with dark hair regarded her friend with a discerning gaze. "Is there anyone in particular at school that you would like to go to a party with?" Melanie laughed. "You always knew how to read me too well." She then leaned forward to avoid being overheard. "In fact, there is one freshman, Carl. He's very nice." She blushed, and he has a positive opinion of me each time we interact. He makes a point of complimenting my appearance and my academic performance." Gary expressed concern. He believes Adam will not be pleased to learn of this. It is merely innocent flirtation. It does not signify anything significant. However, you are correct. Adam is quite advanced in age. I am not inclined to divulge this information to him, as I perceive that it might be perceived as immodest. However, I am compelled to acknowledge the contrast between my current circumstances and those preceding my marriage. Prior to my nuptials, I derived immense joy from engaging in athletic activities and interacting with a diverse array of individuals. I find myself nostalgic for that period. It is imperative to exercise caution. I hold my husband in high regard and am reluctant to jeopardize our relationship. It is evident that Adam would not tolerate any infidelity on my part. If you did engage in such activities, I am willing to wager that there are numerous other women who would be more than willing to provide comfort and companionship to him in the aftermath. I am fully aware of this, and I genuinely desire to spend the rest of my life with him, starting a family, and all that entails. I simply wish to enjoy myself before things become so serious. She lowered her voice and leaned closer once more. Speaking of the gentleman I informed you about yesterday. He has extended an invitation to me to accompany him to Florida for spring break. There was a way to accomplish this without Adam becoming aware of it. I would likely agree. She leaned back and laughed, as if dismissing the idea. However, this is merely a fantasy. It is unlikely to occur. Jerry sat down and gazed at Melanie for a considerable period of time. Finally, she nodded her head as if she had reached a decision. Do not be so confident that you can do this and avoid detection. Melanie let out a sigh that was a combination of disbelief and delight. Are you serious? How could you possibly do that? Are you certain you wish to risk your marriage for a mere week-long liaison? If I could be certain that Adam would never discover your actions, then why not? However, you are merely jesting with me, Gary. There is no feasible way I could engage in such an act without consequence. Indeed, the process is quite straightforward. Firstly, you must create a new Gmail account under an anonymous name, such as Good Friend. Then, use this account to send Adam an anonymous letter warning him that his wife is having an affair. Would I tell him that I'm having an affair? This is an illogical plan of action. Why would I do this? Jerry continued calmly. More precisely, you would write that Melanie is having an affair with some person whom Adam does not know and cannot easily verify. What will this achieve? It will take his attention away from your romantic interest from graduate school. However, this will make Adam suspicious of me, precisely, but when he fails to find the man you are supposed to be having an affair with, he will have no choice but to confront you and demand to know what is going on. However, I do not want him to suspect me. You do not want him to suspect you. When he confronts you, you will be very angry with him for not trusting you. In fact, you will get so angry that you will call time out on your marriage. Does your mother live in Florida? Melanie was taken aback by the abrupt alteration in circumstances. She could respond in a number of ways. One option would be to inform Adam that she is going to Florida for spring break to be with her mother and determine the best course of action regarding her marriage. While Adam is in town trying to locate the mysterious man, Melanie will be in Florida with Carl, engaging in her own intimate encounter. How might she explain this to her mother? Jerry rolled her eyes and said, "You shouldn't. It would be advisable to avoid seeing your mother while you are in Florida. However, if Adam contacts her, you should inform him that you require a complete break to resolve your issues. It is important to make it clear that you do not want to be contacted or visited by him or your mother while you are away. If he attempts to do so, you may even have to consider not returning at all." Melanie gazed at her friend for a moment, considering her plan. Finally, her face brightened. "You know, Gary, I can see how this could. However, upon my return, there is the possibility that Adam will be extremely distressed. In the absence of any evidence to the contrary, he may even conclude that you are engaged in a malicious prank. This will undoubtedly result in feelings of guilt, prompting him to seek your forgiveness. It is likely that you will grant him this, allowing things to return to normal. You will then be able to enjoy your time together once more. The two of you will be together again, closer than ever. What about the mysterious man you are supposed to be having an affair with? Perhaps you should simply come up with a name for him. You may do so, but I believe it will be more believable if it is a real person. Select someone you cannot have an affair with, such as someone very old, living far away, or deceased. That way, if Adam manages to track him down, you will be safe. I believe I know the perfect man for the job. In my first year of graduate school, I had a professor who was rather eccentric. I never saw him again after our first encounter." Melanie suddenly reached across the table and grasped her friend's hand. "You are the best, Jerry," she said. "I am so excited. I truly believe it will work." Then she embraced herself and trembled slightly. "I can't wait to tell Carl," she added. Adam returned to his office and sat down in his second-hand chair. He was seated in a swivel chair, rubbing his forehead in a gesture of concern. "If these components do not become available in the near future, we will miss the deadline for the delivery of prototypes." After the foreman departed, Adam sat trying to devise a contingency plan. When his email alert sounded, he swiftly turned to check his inbox, hoping for positive news. However, when he saw that the subject of the message was about his wife, he considered deleting it. Nevertheless, curiosity prevailed, and he opened that the message stated that Melanie was engaged in a romantic relationship with Professor Bellingham. Adam was disconcerted and felt compelled to inform his close acquaintance of this development. He reread the message, attempting to comprehend its implications. The notion that Melanie would engage in infidelity was preposterous. It was evident that someone was attempting to sow discord between him and Melanie. However, the identity of the individual and the motive behind their actions remained unclear. Adam considered deleting the message but ultimately refrained from doing so. The last thing he needed to deal with at that moment was this. It must be a mistake or a misunderstanding, but his practical side did not allow him to ignore it. Of course it can't be true. Angrily, he pressed the reply button on the email. Who are you? Why are you making such a terrible accusation? What evidence do you have? He pressed send and then stared at the screen in impotent rage. This will not lead to anything good. It is unknown. It is unclear when, or indeed if, the individual in question will respond. In the meantime, it would be prudent to ascertain more information about Professor Bellingham. After opening a browser and accessing the university's web page, the individual searched for the Graduate School of Business department. However, Professor Bellingham was not listed as a member of the staff. Consequently, the individual returned to the faculty register and conducted a further search of the university. Unfortunately, this also proved unsuccessful. He then attempted to contact educational institutions in the area but was unsuccessful. He was perplexed by this turn of events and began to question the veracity of his friend's claim. He conducted a Google search and the search engine promptly returned 5 names, 2 of which were female and not local. He was convinced that the letter was a prank or a hoax, yet he was reluctant to discard it. He began to doubt the veracity of the letter. What if she was having an affair? He had not seen any signs, but that did not mean anything. Besides, he was so busy at work that he hardly spent any time with her. What if she was upset because she was being ignored? He remembered that there were times when she wanted to go somewhere for fun and he had refused her. However, he was working almost 70 hours a week trying to get the business going. Did she understand this? It is evident that she is not aware of the efforts I am making on her behalf. In addition, it is becoming increasingly challenging to maintain a comfortable lifestyle. Her tuition at business school is becoming more expensive each year, and I am investing a significant portion of my income into this venture with the hope of accelerating the process. However, I recognize that I have been neglecting her, which has caused me considerable guilt. In an effort to rectify this, I began monitoring our interactions. After examining the past 3 months of our calendars, I discovered that we had not met in person since then. He ceased his search. As his guilt intensified, he experienced a corresponding surge of anger. While he may not have provided Melanie with the attention she desired, he did not consent to her infidelity. They had previously discussed the potential sacrifices they would have to make when they decided to start the business. She had agreed to this 100%. Therefore, she had no grounds for complaint. His thoughts were interrupted when his foreman Adam's head appeared through the doorway. "Good news," he said. "The components we need have just arrived." "God bless," someone replied. "We need to unpack them and get them to the workshop as soon as possible." When the foreman disappeared, Adam took a deep breath. "Well," he said, "one crisis is averted. If Mel is indeed engaged in an extramarital affair, it is plausible that the other party is a member of the academic community. It is possible that my associate's information was inaccurate or that the university in question did not include his name on their website." He revisited the university's website and located the phone number for the Human Resources Department. Upon contacting the secretary, he inquired if Professor Bellingham was affiliated with the faculty. He was uncertain about the specific faculty, but presumed it was the caller inquired about Professor Bellingham's whereabouts, specifically within the School of Business. After a brief pause, the receptionist apologized and stated that Professor Bellingham was not currently affiliated with the School of Business. The caller then inquired about other potential locations within the university. This time, the receptionist was more forthcoming, but her initial response indicated a lack of knowledge about Professor Bellingham's current status. The caller then expressed his suspicion that Professor Bellingham might have left the university entirely. "An employee a year or 2 ago, I can only confirm our current teaching staff. Why, that is university policy, sir. Is there anything else I can help you with? No, you did your best, he said, attempting to maintain a neutral tone. He proceeded to call the dean of the business school and engage in a series of back-and-forth conversations with the administrative assistant. However, despite these efforts, he was unable to obtain any further information. By this time, Adam's head was throbbing and he was overcome with frustration. I need a good drink, he muttered. He terminated the call in disgust, but this thought gave him an idea and he picked up the phone again. Hello Gary, this is Adam. Listen, would you be willing to meet me after work at Mace's for a drink? I have a problem and I really need your advice. No, I wouldn't like to talk about this on the phone. Can I come to you? Great. I'll meet you there at 6. He checked his email again. There were no more messages from good friend entering Maxie's place. Adam observed Gary seated at a table in a secluded area with a glass of white wine and a mug of his preferred draft beer in front of him. He approached and kissed her on the cheek, expressing gratitude for the beer and, more importantly, for attending the gathering. He then inquired about the nature of the conversation he had been hoping to have with her. She took a sip of wine and then gazed at him for a considerable duration. Adam, I am eager to hear about the challenges you are currently facing in your professional endeavors. Could you please elaborate on the difficulties you are encountering? He considered his options for a moment and then asked, Do you happen to know Professor Bellingham from the university? She shook her head, puzzled. Bellingham? I've never heard of him. Do you consider this information? I am uncertain how to respond. Jerry, I am incredulous that this is indeed the case. However, I am reluctant to ignore it and pretend everything is well. I have spent the entire day attempting to ascertain the identity of this enigmatic Bellingham professor, but I have encountered a dead end at the university. I am uncertain how to proceed. I am unable to afford the services of a private detective, and I lack the time to conduct my own investigation. That is why I am seeking your counsel. You have been a reliable friend to Melanie and me for a considerable period of time. I would be grateful if you could share your thoughts on the matter. She took another sip of wine and then reached out to give his hand a quick squeeze. Her demeanor has often been noticeably agitated in recent months, and she has hastened to continue. It is evident that there are individuals who thrive on creating discord and that this incident could be a mere manifestation of such behavior. Alternatively, it could be the result of business-related tensions that have the potential to spill over into your personal life. There are numerous other potential scenarios that have not yet been considered. What is clear, however, is that this matter cannot be ignored and that it requires immediate attention. I am aware of your strong beliefs regarding the sanctity of marriage and the potential damage that any suggestion of infidelity could have on your relationship with Mel. If you do not address this issue, it could eventually lead to significant difficulties in your marriage. I understand your perspective, Gary, but I am unsure of the best course of action. In my opinion, it would be beneficial for you to share this information with Melanie. She needs to be aware of the accusations made against her. If I do not share this information with Melanie, it will affect my behavior with her. Ultimately, this will have a detrimental impact on our relationship. It will be as if she had actually cheated on me. He stood up and embraced the dark-haired woman. The woman with dark hair expressed her gratitude for Gary's assistance in facilitating her reflection. She articulated her appreciation for his support, emphasizing the depth of their relationship. Adam acknowledged the significance of Gary's role in the situation and requested his assistance. He nodded in acknowledgement and proceeded towards the exit. The woman remained in place, observing his departure. Upon his return, Melanie was already waiting for him. She inquired about his whereabouts, and he responded. He did not respond to her inquiry. Instead, he disregarded it and took her hand, guiding her to the sofa and seating himself next to her. He then informed her that he had something to show her, explaining that it had caused him significant confusion. She sat down next to him, her demeanor betraying her nervousness. He then handed her a printout he had received via email earlier that day. He asked her if she could shed any light on its contents. She read it quickly and then, to his surprise, stood up abruptly. She began to scream, "Do you believe I am unfaithful to you? I do not accept the legitimacy of these allegations. You have been the victim of an anonymous accusation and are now prepared to accuse me of adultery. I do not hold you responsible for this turn of events. If you do not hold me accountable, then why did you present me with these falsehoods? She then seized the printout and crumpled it into a ball, hurling it at him. You might as well plunge this into my heart. The pain was profound. He had placed his trust in someone who was too cowardly to even sign his name, more than he had placed his trust in his own wife. She had grabbed her purse and headed for the front door. He could not even look at her now. He was leaving and did not know when he would be back. He had heard the roar of her car's engine and then the sound of tires screeching as she pulled out of their driveway. I never anticipated this turn of events. My situation is now more challenging than before. He was aware of the answer even before he had finished reading the note. If Mel had given him the note, he would have reacted similarly. However, he was unsure of how to proceed. Jerry was correct in his assessment that he could not simply ignore the letter. It would not be fair to Mel or to him. Despite spending the remainder of the evening contemplating the situation, he remained uncertain about how to proceed. He was aware that he and Mel needed to engage in a discussion, yet he was unable to determine the content of the conversation. He was certain, however, that he wished to bring his wife back to the family home in order to attempt to repair the damaged relationship. Adam felt himself becoming emotionally exhausted, but he was determined to remain awake until Melanie returned. After another hour of waiting, he lay down on the sofa and soon fell asleep. At midnight, he was roused from slumber by the sound of the front door opening. Melanie entered the living room and stood before him, her hands on her hips. Melanie, he began, I believe we really need to discuss this. I don't want to talk about this now, she replied, her tone sharp. You can stay the night on the couch and we'll resume our discussion in the morning without waiting for an answer. She turned on her heel and proceeded down the hallway to their bedroom. Upon hearing the door close, he groaned and lay back on the couch, hoping that sleep would return. It took a considerable amount of time for Adam to fall asleep. He usually got up early to get to the office before everyone else, but even though his body clock woke him up at the usual time, he felt obligated to wait until Melanie showed up so they could talk. He made coffee and sat down at his laptop to read the news while he waited. It was almost 8 o'clock. At 8 p.m., Melanie entered the kitchen. Adam was taken aback to see her with a suitcase in tow. Where are you going? He inquired. Melanie, he began, but she raised her hand to stop him. This calls into question our entire marriage, she stated. I need to be alone to think about what happened, she continued. Spring break starts tomorrow, and I'm going to Florida to visit my mother. Her tone was laced with anger. I plan to spend the whole week there and return to classes next Monday while I'm gone. I don't want to hear a word from you. I need this time for. I do not wish to be contacted in any manner. Do not contact me, nor my mother, nor my mother's residence. Do you understand? I am serious, Adam. If you attempt to contact me, I may not return home at all. I understand, he replied, nodding. Okay, she said, and proceeded to exit the residence, dragging her suitcase behind her. She departed, leaving Adam in a state of shock for several minutes. He eventually returned to the bathroom to shave and change his clothes. He then proceeded to work in a despondent state, only to find that his foreman had assumed control of the situation, distributing the missing components to the appropriate stations. On the model production line, testing proceeded smoothly, which was a positive outcome. In contrast, Adam's marriage was experiencing difficulties. In the afternoon, Adam was working on a spreadsheet when the phone rang. When he answered, he heard that Jerry was on the line. Jerry expressed concern and inquired about Adam's well-being and the outcome of his encounter with Melanie the previous night. Adam provided a negative assessment of the situation. He conveyed that the matter was unfortunate and suggested a follow-up discussion over drinks to address the issue further. Jerry agreed to the meeting place and time. He accessed his email again but found no new messages from Goodren. As he entered the bar, Jerry was immediately aware of the dark circles under his eyes. Adam, it appears you did not get sufficient rest last night. Please inform me of the circumstances. He took a long sip from his beer mug and began to discuss the events of the previous day and Melanie's departure that morning. Jerry, I am experiencing a complex emotional state. I feel a profound sense of sadness and guilt. I followed your advice and it ultimately proved to be misguided. I have given the matter considerable thought and am convinced that your counsel was the only viable option. It was, of course, within my power to do so. I had not anticipated that Mel would respond in such an aggressive manner, but I was unable to conceal this letter and pretend that nothing had occurred. At this juncture, I can only hope that she will regain her composure and that we can engage in a frank discussion when she returns home. You have articulated this sentiment rather well, Adam, but I still feel culpable about what transpired, so I am uncertain of the best course of action for the remainder of this week. Jerry, if Mel and I do not discuss the incident, I do not see a way to progress. Perhaps I will wait a few days and then attempt to contact her. Adam, this is the only course of action you should avoid. She has already formed the impression that you lack trust in her. If you attempt to contact her after she has explicitly requested that you do not, it will only serve to reinforce her belief that she was correct in her assumptions. I acknowledge the validity of this perspective, yet I find myself in a state of profound helplessness. I am uncertain as to how I might ascertain the identity of the individual who sent the letter. The only avenue I have explored thus far is it would be prudent to continue attempting to ascertain the identity of the individual known as Professor Bellingham. If he could be located, he might be able to provide further insights over the coming days. Despite the lack of success, Adam persisted in his efforts to unravel the mystery of the anonymous letter. Despite the lack of success, he remained convinced that Bellingham was somehow connected to the university. He then began to consider other possibilities, including the possibility that the reason he was unable to locate Bellingham was because he was a graduate, rather than a teacher. As both he and Bellingham were alumni, he decided to contact the Alumni Relations Department. When he called and identified himself as a graduate, he was immediately transferred to the Development Department. The individual who answered the phone recorded the necessary information about Adam's address, phone number, and email. He then inquired about Adam's willingness to contribute to the Alumni Fund. I am not calling to make a contribution. I am attempting to locate Professor Bellingham, who I believe may be a graduate. The man proceeded to wait while he searched through several databases. I apologize, but it appears that we have no record of a graduate with that name. Could you please confirm whether he attended graduate school? I have also checked those records. It is possible that he is not a graduate, but may have only studied for a year or two before leaving or transferring. The man seemed to have lost interest. Unfortunately, I am unable to assist you further. Our database only contains information on graduates. After Adam declined his assistance, the man terminated the call. He then proceeded to express his frustration. Despite his efforts, he was unable to make any progress. He took an hour off the next day to visit the Graduate School of Business. Upon arrival, he observed that the office was nearly empty, as it was during the spring break. He then proceeded to inquire about Professor Bellingham with several individuals, eventually meeting with the assistant dean. The assistant dean informed him that he would have to. If you do not comply, we will be forced to call campus security. Adam apologized and hurried away, more upset than ever. Returning to his office, he sat down heavily at his desk after another futile check of email. He dropped his head into his hands, contemplating his next move. What should I do now? At that moment, his work phone rang. When Adam answered, an unfamiliar voice asked, "Are you the young man looking for Professor Bellingham?" When Adam confirmed that he was, the man continued, "My name is Dr. Avery Mayfair. I am a member of the Graduate School of Business faculty, and I may be able to help you. Let me inquire as to your motivation for seeking out Professor Bellingham." Adam was initially reluctant to divulge the specifics of his situation to a complete stranger. However, driven by a sense of urgency, he eventually revealed to Dr. Mayfair the reason behind his search for the missing professor. Upon concluding the conversation, the caller made a contemptuous sound, indicating that they had likely overheard Adam's questions at school earlier that day. The manner in which some of the questions were posed gave them cause to wonder if there might be a similar underlying issue. "I believe I can provide some reassurance, Adam. 2 years ago, Bellingham held the position of adjunct professor at the graduate school. He was a commendable educator, but it is unfortunate that enrollment in his course did not meet the minimum requirements. As a result, his course was cancelled and his contract was not renewed." "This means there's one more thing," said Adam. The recent nuptials of Professor Bellingham to his long-term partner, Harold, prompted Dr. Mayfair to inquire about the circumstances surrounding the professor's decision to leave the university. She expressed her gratitude for the call and sought further clarification regarding the motives behind the letter that had been sent to her. While she initially struggled to comprehend the rationale behind the letter, she was now convinced that it was a fabrication. She expressed her hope that she could provide some measure of reassurance to the professor. She then proceeded to inquire about one final matter. "I must inquire as to why you chose to contact me. I do not intend to be disrespectful, but I am merely an unknown quantity to you." The professor's tone of voice shifted. "I am comfortable disclosing that, many years ago, a similar situation occurred in my own life. My wife left me to pursue an extramarital relationship, and I empathize with anyone who may find themselves in a similar situation. Fortunately, in this case, the warning you received was proven to be false, and I am gratified to have been able to dispel your doubts. However, as you can imagine, I have very strong feelings towards anyone who interferes in a marriage. If this statement were true, I would not hesitate to tell you, thank you, sir. You have no idea how much I appreciate what you did that evening." Adam called Gary to tell her the good news. "I still don't know who is trying to destroy my marriage, but now I know for sure that Mel is not having an affair with Professor Bellingham. It would be prudent to ascertain whether one can trust Dr. Mayfair. After the telephone conversation, I conducted further research and discovered that he is a member of the business school faculty. He is an elderly man, probably around 60 years of age, and appears to be well respected. However, to be absolutely certain, I also investigated Bellingham on the Black Hills website. He was indeed listed there. Adam, you must be extremely relieved. Indeed, you have cause for relief. However, now I am faced with a dilemma. What should I tell Mel when she returns home? Based on what you told me about your confrontation with her, she never gave you a chance to speak. Upon her return, inform her that you never had any misgivings about her. Explain that you were already aware of Bellingham and that you promptly tracked him down upon receiving the letter. However, given her strong reaction, you did not have an opportunity to inform her of this development. If you handle the situation deftly, Adam, she will apologize to you. I am uncertain as to the precise circumstances, as I do not have all the facts. In truth, everything was not as it seems." He heard that smile in her voice. "It is reasonable to posit that there is no inherent harm in bending the truth to a certain extent in order to achieve a desired outcome. This is particularly the case when one is about to return to one's place of residence." Melanie made a surprise telephone call to Gary. "Good morning, Gary. I just wanted to check with you about how Adam is doing before I go home. I'm a little nervous about what I'll encounter when I arrive. The only thing I know for sure is that I am indebted to you for my success in this venture, which was made possible with your assistance and a modicum of good fortune. With these same factors at play, you will be able to return to your husband and your marriage will be in a stronger position than ever." She continued to describe the week ending with Adam learning of Bellingham's whereabouts. "If you play your cards right when you get home, Adam will," she then proceeded to suggest that he should apologize to him, which would result in everything returning to normal. There was a brief pause. She then inquired as to whether he would prefer for everything to remain as it was. He expressed confusion and requested clarification. She then proceeded to reiterate her desire to express her thoughts. She then proceeded to recount a recent incident in which she had an emotional outburst directed at Carl, the individual with whom she had been engaging in a romantic relationship. She then proceeded to describe Carl as being humorous and adept in the bedroom. "I have not experienced such pleasure in many years. I am not yet prepared for my current situation to conclude. I would like to continue seeing him at least until the end of the semester. Gary, you must assist me in finding a solution. Melanie, you are already taking a significant risk by leaving with this individual for a week. If you attempt to maintain the romantic aspect of your relationship here in town, you may face difficulties. Indeed, the probability of success has been significantly increased. It is evident that the plan was executed flawlessly. It is reasonable to assume that a similar outcome can be achieved in the future. It is understandable that the individual in question is attractive. However, there is a risk of compromising the current situation. Your marriage to Adam is a good one. He is hard-working, loyal, and a true family man. Men like him do not come along every day. Are you sure you want to risk it all for a little fun? Melanie chuckled. You turn me on with the phrase, I can come up with a plan. Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now, here's what you need to do. Do you still have that email account you created? The email account you created was, of course, to be kept active. This is beneficial as it allows you to send another letter from a seemingly reliable source. However, this time, you will send a message to yourself to your regular email address. What will be in the new letter? It will be identical to the previous one, except that you will write that Adam is having an affair with you. However, this is not the case. This is indeed the case, and Adam is aware of it. It is unclear, however, how this will help. The initial letter accused you of having an affair. Adam has discovered that you could not have been unfaithful with Professor Bellingham, but he may still have doubts about your fidelity. Gary, you informed me that a letter with Bellingham would provide me with freedom in my relationship with Carl. This was indeed the case, but now, after he receives the second letter, will eliminate any remaining doubts. He has already demonstrated that you were not engaged in an affair with Bellingham and is now certain that he is not having an affair with me. It is therefore evident that the friend is a complete liar, which means that Adam has no reason to doubt you anymore. This means that you can engage in almost any activity without arousing Adam's suspicion. Melanie then proclaimed, Jerry, you are a paragon of ingenuity. I am uncertain how you devised these strategies, but you have effectively granted me a pass for the remainder of the semester. There are 2 additional tasks I require of you, Melanie. First, ensure that Adam discloses the contents of the second letter. However, why is this necessary? By doing so, I can reinforce the notion that you are a reliable individual. Furthermore, the identity of this unidentified associate is not yet known. However, it is evident that he holds a genuine interest in your well-being and will likely heed your counsel. Following the transmission of the message to yourself, it is crucial to log out of your associate's email account. There is a possibility that Adam may inadvertently access his account, which could compromise your confidentiality. It is advisable to sign out of both email accounts when they are not in use. This prevents any unintended access by third parties, including Adam. Love notes from Carl. I previously advised Carl against emailing me, but this advice remains sound. It is better to be safe than sorry. Upon returning home from work that evening, Adam was surprised to find Melanie crying. Given that their relationship had been going well since she returned from Florida, Adam was taken aback by her upset demeanor. He inquired, What is wrong with you, Mel? What has happened? She rushed towards him, stating, Oh Adam, it's all starting again. She then handed him a copy of the letter, which he proceeded to read. After doing so, he swore, You know that's a lie, don't you? He then expressed his confidence in her fidelity, stating, I know that you will never cheat on me. He further asserted that he would never cheat on her either. He then asked, And even if you cheated, did I know it would never happen with Gary? She then proceeded to defend her friend, stating, She is a reliable friend who would never engage in such behavior. It is evident that there is still an attempt to create discord between us, and I am uncertain of the perpetrator's identity or motivation. There must be a way to trace these incidents. She gazed at him, her eyes conveying a hint of uncertainty. Are you going to inform Jerry about this? Do you believe I should? I believe you should, regardless of your personal sentiments. She is now involved, and it would be unfair to withhold this information from her. The following morning, when Adam called, Gary answered in a friendly manner. How are the 2 lovebirds doing today, Adam? The tone was solemn. We are doing well, Jerry. However, there is something new that I need to discuss with you. Could you meet after work? Actually, I plan to work at home after lunch. Could you come to my house? Okay. I'll come in between 6:30 and 7. Opening the door to her apartment in the evening, Jerry immediately noticed the solemn expression on Adam's face. What is the matter, Adam? I have been worried since you called. She is aware of his response. In fact, she informed me of the same thing. Gary shook his head in confusion, expressing his relief at this news. However, he was uncertain about the implications. My interpretation is that an individual is attempting to create discord between Melanie and me. This could be a warning about Professor Bellingham. The only other possibility is that I have an adversary, possibly a business competitor. However, I am unsure who this could be. In light of this, Mel and I have decided to inform you of the situation. If she nodded, I am gratified that you did so, Adam. You are always so considerate, but I am uncertain as to the efficacy of our actions unless the individual in question makes an overt or inadvertent mistake. I am of the opinion that alerting the authorities would be futile, but I am nonetheless exasperated. I am weary of this state of confusion and would prefer that the perpetrator cease their disruptive actions. How does Melanie perceive this? She was visibly distressed when I returned home in a state of tears. This is not unexpected, particularly in light of the initial incident. Given the circumstances, I believe Melanie is particularly vulnerable. She is on the brink of graduation and is understandably anxious. It is crucial that we provide her with ample support and care. As a potential solution, we could consider blocking all mail users from this account. However, this may prove ineffective if the individual continues to send messages. In such a scenario, it would be essential to inform Melanie of any further communications. It would be prudent to check her email on your laptop as frequently as possible. In the event that she receives another letter, you can forward it to your email account before she views it. This approach allows you to avoid interfering with her. I believe that is a sound strategy. He rose to his feet. I am truly sorry that you have been drawn into this situation. If this is intended as an apology, I do not require one. You are a highly valued individual to me, and I am committed to providing assistance. He smiled gratefully and stated that he needed to return home to assess the situation further. Melanie is doing well. He began to walk away but then turned and hugged Gary, kissing her on the cheek. P.E. Thank you for being such a good friend and having you by our side through all of this, it means a great deal to me. When Adam returned home, he was pleased to find Melanie in a much happier mood. The next morning, she was even more cheerful and got up early to have breakfast with her husband. This is a real holiday, Melanie. I don't see you that often before I go to work. Well, I didn't want you to leave this morning. Without being able to say I love you, she informed him, kissing him. She added, I wanted to be sure to let you know that I'm going to a lecture on campus this evening. A few girls and I are going to grab something to eat after this, so I'll probably get home pretty late. Of course, Mel. Everything is fine. We have a lot of leftovers in the fridge, so I can grab a snack here. Thank you, darling. I'll probably come home after school to drop off my school things and change clothes if we don't see each other. The others had a good evening, secure in the knowledge that Melanie would not be home. Adam stayed late at the office for a change, as business was starting to pick up with a large potential client. The client was particularly taken with samples of the new product, and Adam was optimistic that they would place a trial order. At least, he reflected, something was becoming clearer now, he just needed to get to the bottom of who was playing email games with Mel and him. He was still thinking about the mysterious good friend when he entered the house. As he started to walk into the bedroom, he noticed Melanie's laptop sitting on the table. He did not believe that she required his assistance for the lecture. Then, he recalled Gary's proposal. He wondered if she was still checking her email. If so, he needed to ascertain whether she had received any new messages from this individual. When he opened the laptop case, the email page was not open. Therefore, he clicked on the Gmail link to determine if it was registered. Upon doing so, a window opened, asking him to select an account. He saw Melanie's email, but it had been unsubscribed. He began to close Gmail before he had a chance to do so. He then noticed a second account under her regular mail. Upon closer examination, he was overcome with astonishment. The account in question was labeled Good Friend. He was momentarily rendered speechless. He attempted to access the account, but Google prompted him to enter the password, as he was unaware of it. He then closed the tab and slumped into his chair, grappling with the implications of what he had just witnessed. How could she possess an email account with that particular designation? He was aware that Gmail did not permit two users to have the same address. However, this meant that Melanie was the individual who had sent the other missives. He was perplexed by her actions. Why would she send him an anonymous letter? She only accused herself of having an affair after a moment had elapsed. The answer must have been a distraction designed to lead him to believe that she was having an affair with someone else. This was followed by another thought, which was as sudden and unexpected as a punch to the stomach. This was her trip to Florida when he showed her the letter. She had pretended to be very upset with him. She had told him that she was going to visit her mother and that she needed time away from him. He wondered if she had even seen her mother. He quickly took out his mobile phone and pressed her mother's number. He then proceeded to call the elderly woman, who answered on the other end of the line. He engaged in polite conversation for approximately a minute before requesting to speak with Melanie. He inquired as to whether it would be too soon for her to see them again, given the length of time that had passed since their last encounter. He then expressed his frustration at not having seen her for an extended period. He ended the call on a somewhat aggressive note, expressing his displeasure. He then proceeded to ground his teeth in anger. He concluded the call by stating, "Good. Excellent. We will contact you when we have decided on a date." He was unable to establish contact and expressed his frustration. He was curious about Melanie's whereabouts and, more importantly, her companion. He then recalled the last letter he had sent to Melanie. What was its purpose? He considered the possibility that it was another means of diverting her attention from her studies. He wondered whether she was attending lectures with her female friends. His thoughts were dominated by the image of her as a deceitful and untrustworthy individual. He then considered what she wore when she went out for the evening. He returned to the bedroom and began sorting through his wife's underwear. He found it difficult to remember everything about Melanie and had almost given up, but a sudden suspicion gripped him and he returned to check one more item, a garter belt. He was absent. Angrily, he looked for a suitable bra and panties, but they were gone too. He was dining out with some female companions. He returned to the kitchen table to ponder. He was engaging in love sabotage and deception. Melanie returned home after midnight. He was still asleep, but feigned slumber when she entered the bedroom. When he heard the shower turn on, he did everything he could to avoid confrontation. He had not anticipated that attending lectures would be such a strenuous endeavor. Adam arose at an early hour and departed for his place of employment before his wife had even risen. He left a note for her, expressing his hope that she had enjoyed the previous day's lecture. He explained that he had been compelled to leave early for a professional engagement and that he might be delayed in returning. The day was busy, but his meetings were not with clients or suppliers. During lunch, he engaged in some shopping and then proceeded home with some of his purchases to complete a few preparations. He then attended 2 additional meetings, which occupied the entirety of his afternoon. Upon completion of these meetings, he went to dinner and a movie to pass the time. Melanie was already asleep when he climbed into bed, attempting to avoid waking her. Upon waking the following morning, she discovered her husband awaiting her. "I assumed you had departed for your place of employment some time ago, my dear," she said, accepting the cup of coffee he offered. "I wanted to ensure I had the opportunity to see you this morning because I have a flight scheduled to Detroit at noon. I will be away for several days, pursuing potential business opportunities. Given your current circumstances, I don't anticipate you will be required to travel with the same frequency. When do you expect to return? Do you anticipate your return? I do not expect you until Friday evening. If circumstances align favorably, I may depart on Saturday morning. Are you able to manage your affairs in my absence?" She offered him a radiant smile. "Do not concern yourself with my well-being. I am confident I can occupy myself while you are away. I do, however, request that you refrain from contact with our mutual acquaintance during my absence." His expression darkened. "I am sorry, but I must disagree. It is not. It was a peculiar occurrence." He then waved his hand at her, picked up his suitcase, and proceeded towards the vehicle. As he pulled out of the driveway, he frowned. It was evident that she was not aware of his gesture. It was as if she was already preoccupied with other matters, perhaps even making plans to meet her romantic interest once more. In the meantime, I must find a way to occupy my attention. This will ensure that her meeting takes place at home rather than at the airport. Adam left his office at lunchtime. He proceeded to the university parking lot, located off campus. He walked briskly toward the Graduate School of Business, having shed his usual sports jacket and slacks and now wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. He had a cheap backpack slung over his shoulder, and he did not raise his head as he headed to the reading room of the School of Business library. The few students there did not pay any attention to him. Once he was out of sight, he proceeded to casually walk behind the rack of periodicals. He then proceeded to pull out a string of the largest firecrackers he could purchase, lit the extra-long fuse attached to them, and tossed them into a metal container for disposal. He then proceeded to casually walk to the nearest door, propped it up with his backpack, and walked out. Once outside, he proceeded to take out the phone he had purchased the day before. He then contacted campus security, requesting their immediate assistance. He informed them that there had been an incident involving gunfire at the business school. He then turned the receiver towards the library and observed a series of fireworks. He terminated the call and proceeded to cross campus to his vehicle as the sound of sirens grew louder and people began to evacuate the area. He was parked in his neighborhood and observing the situation from his vantage point when, approximately an hour later, he observed his wife's vehicle entering his driveway. Moments later, a second vehicle pulled up behind her and a male figure emerged. In times of danger, there is no place like home. Adam muttered to himself, a grin playing on his lips. He then proceeded to enter his vehicle and drive to the motel where he had made a reservation late that evening. He drove around for a while. He then returned to his room and attempted to obtain some sleep. The following morning, the adulterous couple was surprised to find Adam leaning against the stranger's car door. Melanie was taken aback when she recognized him, thinking he was in Detroit. "Carl," she stammered, and then. She then realized that her thoughts were inappropriate and that her statements were unkind. Carl had simply stopped by to speak with Melanie, and she was being unfair in her accusations. She was being untruthful and inconsiderate, and she needed to stop. He then displayed his teeth and gestured at the two of them, indicating that her statements were accurate. He knew that they had spent the night together and had a record of their conversations and activities. See Speaking and Listen. He then took the manila envelope, which was tucked under his arm, and handed it to her. He informed her that he was filing for divorce on the grounds of adultery. Inside the envelope, she would find the name and number of his lawyer. She was advised to find a lawyer and ask him to contact her lawyer, but she was told that he would not be contacting her. She was informed that, following her actions, he did not intend to see or speak to her again. She was urged not to say that it was just a one-time mistake. "There's been a misunderstanding. We can resolve this issue. I assure you that I did not intend to be aggressive." He responded with a growl, indicating that he was not amenable to further discussion. "In regard to the aforementioned incident, it has been established that you have been engaging in sexual intercourse with him for several weeks. This is not a mere oversight, it was a deliberate act. You planned the entire sequence of events in advance. I am aware that you sent that letter as a diversionary tactic so that you could spend spring break together, regardless of where you went. Furthermore, your mother has inquired about your recent lack of visits. It is evident that your attention was preoccupied with your illicit relationship with him. He surmised that you were so engrossed in your affair with the man at the Sulan that you neglected to even go see your mother." He then turned his attention to Melanie's lover. "Indeed, that is the case." The scene prompted Adam to promptly retrieve his cellular device and capture the astonished individual's actions on camera. The man emitted a low growl, clenched his fists, and advanced menacingly towards Adam. Adam swiftly reached into his jacket pocket and extended his hand, displaying the handle of the firearm he had concealed. "I would advise against this course of action," he said calmly. "I have no intention of compromising my life by killing you, but I will be forced to consider shooting you in self-defense if you do not retreat. Defense, cease." The man raised his hands and took a step back. Adam turned to Melanie with a grin. "It would appear that your boyfriend is more inclined to love than to fight." His voice became cold and hard. "Take everything you require from the house and then depart. Mel, do not linger when I arrive." In response to her assertion that she never wanted to see him again, Adam stated that he had never desired such a result. He then proceeded to his vehicle, while she sat on the driveway and began to sob into her hands. On his way to his office, Adam stopped at a dumpster and he discarded his mobile phone and the toy firearm he had been concealing. He was gratified by the realistic appearance of these items. He then returned to his desk and used his mobile phone to send an email containing one of the photographs he had taken. He was surprised to receive a call a few minutes later. "This is Dr. Mayfair. Did you just email me a photo? The woman is a strikingly beautiful individual. I believe she was enrolled in one of my courses last year. The man seated next to her is Karl Mannheim, one of my doctoral students." "Good to hear, Doctor. I must confess, however, that I have a score to settle with Mr. Mannheim. He was the serpent who stained your Garden of Eden, but I believe my Eve was far from innocent. It's clear that your interpretation is very interesting. I am gratified to have been of service, though I regret that the outcome did not align with your expectations. I extend my gratitude to you, Doctor, for your time and assistance, regardless of the result. I wish you well and urge you not to lose hope, as things will ultimately work out for the better. I speak from experience, having traversed this path and emerged on the other side. 2 months later, I found myself in a similar position, seated across from my lawyer and grappling with frustration. Have you received any updates from Melanie's legal counsel? The divorce proceedings are progressing. Yesterday, I spoke with Hannah Montrose, who today sent a counteroffer to Melanie. The positive development is that Melanie has decided not to contest the divorce. It appears that, following the release of the recordings you made in your home, Hannah convinced your wife to accept the dissolution of the marriage. However, the negative aspect is that, now that Melanie has acknowledged the end of the marriage, she seems determined to secure the maximum financial benefit from it. She is attempting to extract as much financial compensation as possible from me. She has been untruthful and deceptive, and when her actions are discovered, she expects me to provide financial compensation for her actions. This is an unfair demand. What are her expectations? I typically anticipate a request for the division of all marital property. However, in this case, there is no marital property to divide. She does not have a pension plan or significant savings. The only asset she possesses is a share in a business that is currently operating at a loss. It would appear that she anticipates his failure and thus has only requested alimony from the court. I am grateful for her confidence in me. Adam responded sarcastically, prompting the lawyer to present the sheet to his client. Adam then exclaimed, "This is absurd. She is aware that I cannot afford it. If I am required to pay that amount each month, I will effectively liquidate my business." He then inquired, "What can I pay her today?" I posit that Melanie is refusing to negotiate, so Hannah will propose just that to Judge Abe. I am not prepared to concede and provide Melanie with that much money without a fight. We must take our chances in court. Adam, I understand what you are suggesting, but it is important to remember that Judge Abe has absolute power. You will be left with whatever he decides. Approximately 1 month later, Adam sat in the courtroom and waited anxiously after both lawyers presented their arguments. Judge Abe adjourned. Adam inquired of his lawyer in a whisper, "How do you assess the situation?" "I am uncertain. The outcome is unclear, and the judge may opt for a compromise." "No, Your Honor. I believe it would be beneficial to inquire further with Mrs. Weather before rendering a decision." Hannah Monroe appeared apprehensive, but then smiled and motioned for Melanie to approach. She reassured her client, "Everything will be fine," in a low voice. Adams's lawyer took his seat and leaned towards him. It is often an unfavorable indication when the judge requests additional input from the opposing side. Adam observed the proceedings with a disgruntled expression as his soon-to-be ex-wife testified. The wife testified that the suit she wore was of a conservative cut but fitted enough to display her figure. He observed that the judge was watching Melanie and shook his head. "I believe we have reached the end of the proceedings," he whispered to his lawyer. The judge then proceeded to scan the papers in front of him before turning to face the woman seated in the witness box. "Mrs. Wetherbe, it would appear that the sole issue separating you and your husband is the amount of alimony that should be awarded in line with your proposal, which is significantly higher than that offered by your husband. Indeed, may I inquire as to how you justify the amount you have proposed?" "We are requesting a higher amount in recognition of the length of my marriage and the fact that I will have to start my life essentially from scratch. However, it is clear that this is not aligned with the circumstances of the case, Mr. Wetherbe. He asserts that his sole source of income is the company he founded, which is still operating at a loss. How, then, does he justify his ability to afford the financial support he offers? We argue that Adam is deliberately reducing his true income by siphoning funds into his business. He could easily pay the child support I'm asking for by simply modestly adjusting his current investment level. The audited financial statement demonstrates a negative cash flow. It is possible that Adam's accountants could manipulate the numbers to achieve a desired result. The judge expressed skepticism. Is it being suggested that the financial statements are fraudulent? Melanie, the lawyer, appeared taken aback and shook her head. She then quickly recovered her composure and clarified that the suggestion was not accurate. It is possible for earnings to be deferred. Furthermore, he has accelerated investments which are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Adam felt his blood pressure rise as he leaned over and whispered angrily, what a ___. He then stated that the judge knows it is not true and is simply trying to pressure him to get what she wants, regardless of the consequences. Meanwhile, Judge Abe reviewed the case summary in front of him. We have hitherto concentrated on the investment made by your husband in his business. It would appear that Mr. Weatherby has also made a significant contribution to your education. If you are referring to my MBA, then it is true that Adam paid for my tuition. However, I was the sole individual who undertook the requisite work, completed all the necessary courses, sat all the requisite tests and wrote the dissertation. I have worked assiduously for the past 2 years, including last summer. You have recently graduated from university. Is that correct? Indeed, I graduated with honors, she said proudly. He nodded in approval. Mrs. Weatherby, that is all. You may take a seat. When Melanie stood next to her lawyer again, Judge Abe raised his glasses and looked at both sides for a moment. Having heard all the evidence, I intend to award Mrs. Weatherby the full amount of financial support she requested. Adam winced and Melanie leaned over and hugged her lawyer. However, the judge was not yet finished. This financial settlement equates to a monthly amount that will allow Mrs. Weatherby to live quite comfortably without working for the foreseeable future. Nevertheless, she has just completed a college degree that should prepare her for a high-paying business position. In order to provide additional motivation for Mrs. Weatherby to utilize her costly education, I am awarding her alimony for a period of 6 months. This is a reasonable timeframe, as evidenced by the fact that she has already completed a college degree that should prepare her for a high-paying position. Melanie cried out, I can't do that. You can, the judge replied, striking the wooden block with a hammer. Melanie's lawyer quickly pulled her away from the bench, even as she continued to protest. To attempt to appeal the decision, only the appearance of a substantial bail amount convinced the unfortunate young woman to cease her actions. I can live with the stipulation of paying child support for 6 months, Adam informed his lawyer as they stood and began to exit the courtroom. I was under the impression that we were unsuccessful in our appeal when the judge. He selected her number, but it seems that he was not particularly impressed with the manner in which she attempted to exploit the situation to her advantage. It is not common for husbands to behave in such a manner in divorce proceedings. One might inquire as to what factors contributed to his leniency. It is unlikely that the fact that she pleaded no contest to the charge of adultery was a significant consideration. It would have been prudent for him to take this into account when determining the financial settlement. Adam looked back again to see Melanie still arguing with her lawyer and chuckled. He was pleased with how things had turned out. At that moment, he was touched on the shoulder by an elderly man whom he had never met before but who seemed vaguely familiar. I wanted to introduce myself, the man explained. I'm Professor Mayfair. The grey-haired man introduced himself as Professor Mayfair. Adam shook his hand firmly. Professor, it is an unexpected pleasure for me to meet you in person. Thank you again for your help. What brought you to court today? This afforded me the chance to speak with an old acquaintance, Judge Abe, who shook Adam's hand once more. I am gratified to see that things have worked out well for you, he said. Should I be of further assistance, I would be pleased to help. He winked. It is often the case that divorced men must support one another. The professor then took her leave, and Adam watched her go. He muttered, interesting, then shook his head as he did so, glancing over his shoulder. He thought he saw Gary in the crowd of spectators, but when he turned she was not there. It took an exceedingly long time before she pressed a familiar number on her mobile phone. When the call was answered, she hesitantly said, "Hello, Jerry. It's me, Melanie." "Melanie, what a surprise. I haven't heard from you since you moved to Florida. How are you doing? Are you currently engaged in that endeavor?" In fact, that is one of the difficulties I have encountered. I assumed that with my MBA I would be able to secure gainful employment without difficulty. However, it has become evident that employers in this region place a higher value on experience than on academic credentials. The majority of the positions I was offered were internships or similar positions. I must admit that such roles do not appear to offer significant financial stability. When the alimony payments ceased, I found myself in a desperate situation. I even accepted a position as an administrative assistant, which proved to be a challenging experience. I was employed as an assistant for a period of time, but the position was unsatisfactory. Consequently, I have commenced a new career in financial advice. In fact, that is one of the reasons I contacted you. I am able to analyze your financial situation if you are amenable. You may be surprised at the number of people who neglect these matters. There was a brief pause. "Melanie, I would be delighted to assist you, but my finances are in a satisfactory state at the moment, and I am optimistic about the future. I do not believe I require assistance at this time." "I understand. It is okay, Jerry." "Oh. I have often heard this, but I decided to attempt it. It is extremely challenging to gain a foothold in this business. In fact, I had to move in with my mother to reduce expenses." "Do you live with your mother? What happened to you and Carl?" "I would advise you not to mention that individual's name. We broke up just a few months after we arrived here." "Did you break up? What has happened?" "Oh, Jay, that was a terrible situation. Carl dropped out of school without earning his MBA. I am unsure of the exact circumstances, but his advisor he rejected his master's thesis and informed Carl that he would have to start over. Carl experienced a profound sense of bitterness and ultimately chose not to return. He refused to seek employment and instead spent his days at our apartment, engaged in leisure activities such as video gaming and consuming alcohol. Over time, he began to direct his resentment towards me. It reached a point where I felt compelled to contact the authorities on his behalf. I empathize with you, Melanie, in having to part ways with him. It is fortunate that you have the opportunity to move on from this experience. Now you can freely go out and meet new people, have fun, and go dancing whenever you want. Recall how much you missed all this when you were married." Melanie sighed. "Nightclubs and parties require money. Gary and I do not currently have a great deal of disposable income. In fact, when I go out, it is not as glamorous or exciting as I previously thought. I remember one friend warning me that there were a great many more unsavory characters than there were decent ones." She paused. However, when Gary remained silent, Melanie opted to redirect the conversation. "What about you, Jerry? How are you doing? Are you currently dating anyone special? In fact, my circumstances have undergone a significant transformation. Mel, I am actually getting married next month. My new husband is quite fortunate." "I know him." "Yes, you know this Adam." "Melanie, Adam and I are engaged." "Are you engaged to my Adam?" "You cannot do this." "I have already done so. We will have a modest civil ceremony is to be held in the backyard of our recently purchased residence, after which we will embark on a brief honeymoon to Paris. Adam is unable to bear the financial burden of such an extravagant trip, particularly given the recent developments in both our lives. In addition to my own circumstances, Adam's financial situation has also undergone a significant transformation. In the same month that you relocated to Florida, he received a substantial order that had been in development for an extended period. This, coupled with his expertise in the field, led to a surge in business growth. His latest product has proven to be a valuable addition to the automotive industry. This year, Adam received an offer from a large manufacturer to purchase his business for a substantial sum. He accepted the offer, and the transaction is scheduled to be finalized next week. As you can see, there is no cause for concern regarding our financial future." Melanie could only stutter, but Gary persisted, and her tone had changed. You were aware that this could have been yours, Melanie, but you were not content with what you had. I informed you from the beginning that you were risking everything by initiating a relationship. Your extramarital affair is merely one example. I had previously warned you that there would be women who would be willing to assume the role of a supportive partner if your marriage were to fail. However, you were the one who encouraged me to pursue this course of action. It was you who devised the plan for me to suddenly become involved with Melanie. Melanie's voice rose in shock. Melanie, you are mistaken in your assumption that I forced you to engage in an extramarital affair. I did not compel you to act against your will. I provided you with the opportunity to act on your own volition. I am incredulous at your assertion. It is more probable that you were the individual who informed Adam about Carl. You are more astute than you give yourself credit for. If I informed Adam, he would question how I knew. That would be a logical conclusion. However, I advised you not to delete your secret Gmail account. I advised Adam to check his email, as I was certain he would see the messages I sent him. I did not inform Adam about your romantic involvement with another individual. Instead, I orchestrated events to ensure that the pieces of the puzzle would fall into place in a way that would benefit me. I am astonished to discover that you have betrayed my trust, Gary. I had assumed that we were friends. I recall hearing the saying, all's fair in love and war. However, your actions will not go unpunished. I will ensure that Adam is aware of your deceitful actions. He will surely be disillusioned. It would be prudent to cancel the wedding as soon as he becomes aware of the truth. I am genuinely sorry, Melanie, but I must interject and inform you that Adam and I have plans for the evening and I wish to present myself in the best possible light for him. Furthermore, I advise you not to contact me again, as I will block your number as soon as I end the call. Your actions are reprehensible. Upon his return from work, Jerry greeted her future husband with a kiss. Adam reciprocated the gesture and then proceeded to remove her from the premises. A piece of paper from his jacket revealed the identity of the author of a letter that had been sent to Melanie. Oh, really? Jerry said casually. I almost forgot about her. What does she need? Adam asked, looking at his bride impassively. She wrote to warn me about you, Adam said. She says you planned everything that happened just to separate Mel and me. It's pretty wild, Jerry said. Can I see? Melanie asked. Jerry handed her the printout. She glanced at it quickly, then handed it back to him with a smile. Melanie could make her fantasy about jealousy seem plausible if she added one more detail. He looked at her, and she winked at him. She should have signed it, good friend, he thought. He spent a few minutes laughing. He subscribed to the channel so that his second wife would not cheat on him. He listened to the next story, which was even more unbelievable than the first. If you are under 18, do not listen to the next story.